Good morning, guys. It's Miss Van Baron. It is the middle of my spring break. It's Tuesday of spring break. You're going to be watching this on Monday, April 13th, but I'm not even sure what the date is today. It's spring break. I shouldn't need to know, right? All right. Well, this is the lesson for lesson 133. It is about scale drawings. In scale drawings, if you look at the top, it gives us the fact. A scale drawing of a map is used to show long distances and a small amount of space. 1 inch can represent many miles. Now, if you think of the maps that we've done in the past for geography, for example, if you would measure the distance from the top of South America to the bottom of South America, which we actually did, would it make sense to say, well, it's about 7 inches from the top to the bottom, from the north to the south? Of course not. If you would go to South America, 7 inches is the same as 7 inches here. 7 inches in South America would be about this much. And it does not make sense to say that it's about 7 inches from the north to the south. Now, that means on a map that there's big distances represented in a very small amount of space. And so if we did that map again, we would have to make a scale. Maybe the scale would say that each inch is equal to 100 miles. Well, the scale in this map says that each inch is equal to 1 mile. All right? And so in this map, then, when we measure those distances, we're going to find that each inch is equal to 1 mile because it wouldn't make sense if it was only equal to an inch. Now, number 1 says, find the distance of the following. Use your ruler to measure. Always measure along the lines. Now, if you don't have your ruler, now is the time to pause the video and go and get it. Another thing that would be helpful at this point is your math worksheet. You should have that there with you, and you should be measuring along with me. I'll try to go at a slower pace so you can measure with me and still keep up. It says in letter A, we have to find the distance from the post office to the store. So I'm going to take my ruler, and we've measured distances before. And when we measure, we always have to start with that first dash. On your rulers, it might say 0 here. You need to take that first dash and line it up with that first dot. Okay? And then you're going to measure from that first dot to the second dot. And you'll notice that right under the second dot on your ruler, it says 1. Well, we're on the inches, so where it says 1, that means 1 inch. But on our scale, it tells us how much 1 inch is actually equal to. And 1 inch is actually equal to 1 mile in real life. So when it is 1 inch from the post office to the store, that actually means it's 1 mile from the post office to the store. All right? You can write that in the blank down here. The next thing we have to do is figure out how far it is from Ted's house to the store. Now, the temptation for you guys is going to be to stick that first line right here on Ted's house and then to measure directly to the store. That's not what the question asks, though. When we go to the store, generally, unless maybe if we're riding our bikes or walking, we're not going to cut directly across the fields to go to the store. In fact, we're going to follow the roads. Okay, so imagine you're in a car driving to the store. From Ted's house then to the store, we actually have to measure the distance from Ted's house to the post office, and then the post office to the store. We've already measured this distance, so we're not going to measure it again. We're going to put our ruler with that first dash on that first dot. You see how it lines up with that first dot. And our second dot lines up with one of these dashes. Now, when we have a distance that's between two whole numbers, whole number 1, whole number 2, that means we have a fraction or a part of a whole. And we learned 3 important parts that fall between 1 and 2. The first important part is the second longest line. That second longest line is known as the half-inch mark. And that's the mark that we have for this problem. The next most important one is the 1/4 mark. And then the 3/4 mark. They're the third longest line. So if the 1-inch lines, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, if those are the longest lines, our second longest lines, usually not all rulers have this, our second longest lines are the 1/2 inch. Our third longest lines are the 1/4 inch or the 1/4 inch lines. 1/4, 3/4. This one lands on the 1/2 inch. We're not going to write 1/2 inch here though, because we have 1 full inch plus another 1/2. So it's actually 1.5 inches in that distance, but we know from our scale that 1 inch is actually equal to 1 mile, which means that this is 1.5 miles. Now, to figure out the distance from Ted's house to the store, we can't just say, oh, it's 1.5 miles, because it's actually 1.5 miles and then 1 mile, which means we're going to take these two numbers and add them together. Remember, when you add a whole number and a mixed number, you have to stack them properly. So if I'm going to add these, I'll just write this down for you so you can see how to stack them. Your fractions should be on top of each other, and your whole number should be on top of each other. So here's our mixed number. The other number we have is a whole number. So this is what your addition problem for number 1B would look like. All right, and then make sure to label with a mile. The next problem we're going to do is, you know what? That was 1C that we just did. So make sure you label 1C. We skipped 1B, so we're going to come back to it. I went down instead of across, but I promise we'll do this one too. We're going to measure the distance from church to Ted's house. Now, before, like I said, we cannot go straight from church to Ted's house. We have to go from Ted's house to Bob's house and then Bob's house to church. We're taking the roads. All right, so when Ted goes to church, he passes Bob's house on his way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler down with that first dash on Ted's house and figure out where the second dot falls. And the second dot falls right on top of the 1 inch mark. But we found out 1 inch is actually equal to 1 mile, so I'm going to label that distance as 1 mile. All right, that was the distance from Ted's house to Bob's house. Now we need to know how far it is from Bob's house to church. So I'll put that first dash down on that first dot right here. And here's church right here. Now, it's a little bit confusing here because it appears as if church just kind of lands almost to 2, but not quite, but way far past 1 inch. But don't worry, because we learned about what each of those marks means. Here we have 1 inch, here we have 2 inches. Remember, the second longest one is a 1/2 inch mark. Here's the third longest lines, 1/4 and 3/4. And if you know those two items of information, you'll see that church actually falls on the 3/4 mark. So we have 1 whole inch plus 3/4. And this is the way we write 3/4. Now, it's not 1 3/4 inches, though that's the distance between Bob's house to church on paper. It's 1 inch equals 1 mile, so this is 1 3/4 mile. Now, when you figure out how far it is from Ted's house to church, you're going to be stacking those correctly with the whole numbers on top of the whole numbers and the fractions, which there's only 1 on top of the fractions. So your problem, again, should look similar to this with different numbers. All right, once you have those answers, I've done 3 of the problems with you. And if you have any more questions about this, feel free to talk to me. You can always call me or text me. And I'm so happy that I could come and talk to you today. I wish I could see you all. And I can't forget, it was Danica's birthday on April 3, I believe, which was way before spring break, but this is my first chance to say happy birthday to her now. So happy birthday, Danica. I hope you had a great day. Bye.